Are you ready to speak your truth and live in alignment with your highest potential? Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership, a podcast for leaders, thinkers, and future makers dedicated to creating the conscious workplace of tomorrow. I'm your host, Jenny Clark. Join me and my guests as we move beyond action and doing to the essential truths, knowing and being. Whether you're an accomplished executive like me or a leader in training, we invite you to listen, learn, and grow with us. Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership. And today we have yet another fascinating leader guest. This gentleman's name is Bill Nottingham. And Bill is a managing partner and vice president of growth for Nottingham Spirk. And he represents part of the second generation of Nottingham Spirk's leadership. For those of you not familiar with this organization, it was founded in 1972 and is one of the world's longest standing private innovation companies. And as a firm, their mission is to improve lives around throughout the world through innovative product solutions and even save lives through breakthrough biomedical devices. I'm going to let him tell you about all the cool stuff that his organization has developed. This is one of those little known gems that has made significant contributions to the world. And Bill himself is a member of numerous boards, professional associations. He's a speaker and a thought leader on all things innovation. So Bill Nottingham, welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to being here. This is it's something near and dear to my heart, and it's always fun to share with others.
Thank you. This is great. You and I met through a mutual friend, Ty Ahmad Taylor, I think, probably 6 or 9 months ago. And I was so fascinated by your story that I wanted to have you on to talk all about the nature of your work and what leadership means. And so let's just dig into it. I always like to hear the story of you, kind of how you came up. This is a family-owned business. And so tell me how you came into it, because you didn't, I don't know if it always assumed that you would be in the business?
Well, it's funny. I grew up in a creative family, and it's all I knew. My father and John Nottingham and John Spirk, they co-founded the firm at a design school. And one of the first clients was a little known company called Rotodyne. And they were rotational molding company that made things such as medical products, bedpans, and other types of round, kind of plastic objects. And what they did is they ended up turning the company to Little Tikes, which became one of the thriving toy companies of the 80s, 90s, and today. Yeah. And it really changed the lives of the toy industry because it was not, you didn't have to assemble the toys. They were ready to go. And what he would do is he'd bring home prototypes that I didn't know what a prototype was. I was a kid. And I'd be playing with these toys. I remember an alligator seesaw and like an airplane seat and things like that. And so I lived in this world where we just tried things. We played. The dinner tables were like brainstorm sessions, and there was lots of fun. And so I just loved doing that. And of course, he would bring stuff home and work. And I had my Little Tikes drawing table in his office, and we'd draw together. And it was just what we did. And it was not necessarily like I was destined to do something. It was something that he showed me by doing, and I liked that. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so I wanted to do it too.
What a great way to learn. I was just talking to somebody about education, and we were both kind of questioning the extent to which the way we're educating our children now is the best way for them to actually learn. I'm not so convinced. You learned in a really wonderful, interactive, creative way.
Well, it's funny because I love to go to conferences and looking forward to them being in person at some point. One of them recently, well, not so recently, was the Fast Company Innovation Festival that's usually held in New York City. And I think it was maybe back in 2018, and there was a professor from MIT that wrote a book saying that it was something about kindergarten is like the greatest innovation to education that's ever been, because it's experiential. There's no orientation of desks. It's very just play. And he said, for some reason, after kindergarten, it changes, and education becomes much more rigid. And he said that we should learn about the innovation of kindergarten. And so if you think about that, I love to learn by doing and playing and experimenting. And so you may be onto something, but I believe that creativity is such a fragile thing, and it's also exciting when you get to do it as your profession.
Yeah, good for you. Explain all that Nottingham Spirk does, because I frankly didn't know that there were, I guess I should have thought about it, but there were other companies that do what you do, right? It's not as though the innovation comes from within some of these other organizations, but you represent this sort of clearinghouse. How would you characterize the business? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I believe that we were probably one of the original. I guess we started out as a design firm. There were always architectural firms and things, but we were one of the original and probably still standing privately held design groups. Now we're more innovation because we feel that encapsulates engineering, consumer insights, prototyping, and so on. But if I was to say who we are as a company, is we are. Our purpose is to keep innovation alive. We make that is an important thing. A lot of companies tend to. So, for example, if I take most corporations, the ones you'd kind of assume, their job is to sell their products, improve them, and so on. But it's very hard to change the paradigm. It's very hard to disrupt. It's very hard and risky for people at these companies to take those risks, because what if they fail? That might be the end of their job. And so we are somewhat of a resource to enable those creatives in companies to deliver on innovation, because this is all we do. Literally, we don't think about anything we do as a risk, because there's nothing else. We do that every day. And so because we work in so many different categories and industries, we can bring that knowledge, that freshness to the table. And, we teach them to fish, and then they fish. And so, but what's interesting about NS, which we call it too, is we're entrepreneurial. We start businesses. And then what we do is we get them to a point, and we basically sell them off and get them acquired. And then we start new ones. So we have lots of avenues that we approach, but it all revolves around making lives more fun, making them better, improving things. One of my favorite things to do as a professional is looking at something and saying, why is there no product that does this? Why do we have to do it that way? And then we say, well, let's do it different. And then let's make a product out of it.
I love that. I mean, it sounds like an ideal job.
Yeah, it's fun. The other day I was talking to my son. I was saying, I said, he goes, Dad, do you guys make this? And I say, yes. And he says, do you make that? Yeah. Do you make this? And I said, well, we don't yet, but we should,
How old's your son?
He's 10.
Oh, that's a great age.
Yeah.
So cool. So you're second generation in your family's business, and that can be both a blessing and a curse. So it sounds like you had a choice. Your father didn't force you into anything, and you worked elsewhere before you joined the business formally. Yeah.
Correct. So when I decided that I wanted to go to design school, I grew up in Cleveland, which where we're based, and I wanted to live elsewhere. I wanted to, go to California. I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to get out and see what the world was like. And I tried. I went to so many design schools all around the country, and I decided ultimately that the Cleveland Institute of Art and Design was, for me, the best. They had everything I wanted. You got your own space. Like, you had a dedicated workspace that you could have as yours to put your stuff up. And so that, ironically enough, became, so naturally, of course, there's at the time there was one major innovation company, NS. So imagine the challenges I had to navigate, because you can imagine many of those probably thought, well, why are you here? You already have a job. And so I had to kind of combat that preconceived notion and work harder. And so it really kind of gave me the fire to do everything I could to prove myself, but have fun doing it. So I can't not say I wasn't stressed out at the time, but I had a lot of great friends that were talented too. So we kind of we were like a band. We all kind of like were great in our own areas, and we helped each other get better. And then even beyond that, I decided that I wanted to do something different. And so I loved cars, and I was lucky enough to become an automotive designer at General Motors. And, how could you turn down a position to design Cadillacs, And so I went to General Motors. It was amazing. I got to work with some of the greatest designers in the world. And to this day, I still have a lot of friends there. And automotive design is a very small world. Everybody knows everybody all around the world. I mean, you think about now, it's very easy to know people at Tesla or Mercedes or anybody, because it's just a small niche community, and they tend to get together and speak all the same language. So for me, it was exciting because I got to get the taste of the corporate life, a very large company. But even then, I decided at the time that I wanted to move somewhere else. I wanted some variety. And so what's interesting is I wanted to still live. That was still the Midwest. I wanted to go somewhere else. I wanted to live in a bigger city just to know what it was like. And I ended up moving to Chicago, which I think that's where you were.
Yeah, I'm now. Back.
And I ended up working at a firm there. And it was interesting to think he didn't ever give me anything about it. He said, "That's great, go for it." And it was a competitor. And I didn't really care either. I just wanted to do something great. And so I found a great spot. I enjoyed living in the city. But I just decided at a certain point, I wanted to have a little bit more mission and purpose. And this book I was reading, it's funny, I'm a designer. So at the time, I wasn't a big reader. I like pictures. But I was on it, oddly enough, now I read tons of books. But at the time, I was still in that phase, and I read the book Made in America by Sam Walton, and it just started making me think about the meaning of being in a family company, how special that was, and I decided that I wanted to come back and be here. And so that really did change things for me.
Nice. I love that. And then how did the leadership piece evolve for you? Because it's one thing to be a designer, to be a creative. It's another thing to be inside an organization where you're trying to motivate and inspire and support and guide others to demonstrate that, as well as run other aspects of the business.
That's very true. I think it evolved. I really enjoy getting chances to try things. And I've always felt an interest in leading. I was a camp counselor in high school. I always liked to do things and have direction, although it's always very scary. You can imagine as you grow up, there's a lot of things that you learn. But for me, when I came to Nottingham Spirk, I did know my place when I started. I knew that I needed to learn and, kind of try everything. It was scary because I still needed to hone my skills. I still didn't feel like I had all that I could do. But at a certain point, I kept asking one of my leaders at the time, why aren't we working with Nike? Why aren't we working with, other companies like that? And he said, he's like, we can. Why don't you go get them? And I'm like, well, how do I do that? This was very early internet. This was like early. I had a Hotmail account at the time, so this was, I think Friendster was around at that time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, the thing is that I didn't know, how was I supposed to find these people? There was no LinkedIn. And so one of the coolest things that happened was I literally was able to figure out how to get to Tinker Hatfield, who was, the famous designer at Nike who did the Nike Air, and he did the Jordans. And so I actually somehow got to his email, and he actually wrote me back. And I was like, I found out that this was actually possible. Like you could actually get to people, like big people. Now, I never got the job. I never got to get work from Nike for NS, but I got to interact with them. He even passed me down to other people. And I never talked to them because there was no Zoom or Teams or Squadcast. And so that was kind of those things that, like, I remember that was the first time that I discovered my ability to get to people, to try to convince people that, this could be a cool collaboration. And so fast forward after that, I kept doing work, and I just loved the notion of being able to be a part of what actually became the product. And so over time, I took chances. I helped lead prototype development. I worked with engineers, and then it got to the point where I was given, what's so great about our firm is that if you do well at something, you get more opportunities to do it again. And so that's a great leadership ability. So,
Indeed.
And you're not penalized if you screw up, so I think the thing is, if you get a chance, if you want to do it, you do more of it and you keep going. And so there was a certain point where we actually sold a small venture company to Unilever, and it was a personal care device. And so the agreement was that we became essentially a partner with Unilever, and I got the chance to lead product programs with them. And so what's so exciting about Unilever is I really believe this shaped me. Is it's an international company. I did this product for Axe body spray that became the Axe Bullet, and there was a UK version called Lynx. And so I got to work with the UK marketing people, and I got to travel, and and it just I kept getting more chances, and I took them. And so at one point I was leading we had about 6 projects with Unilever, and I was working with all these teams all around the world. And it was a lot of fun. I even got to go to factories in Thailand and China and Japan. It was a very defining, I really felt that work really helped me understand how the world was. It's not just about the US.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask kind of a naive question, though, because you're talking about a company like Unilever, which is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought that they would have the capability and capacity to do some of this design and innovation that your organization offered them.
And many companies do. And what we always say is companies like the Unilevers, like the Procter and Gambles, like the many other companies like them, they are best in class, and there's a reason why they are. But what they're not good at is disruptive, new, different, paradigm shifting. And so when they and it's interesting, it's funny. I worked with a company out of London. Who'd think they would choose a group out of Cleveland?
Right.
I mean, that's always been one of those things I've been trying to change, is not only the Nottingham Spirk, but the impression of where I'm from. I can't tell you how many times I've been to San Francisco or Las Vegas where they're like, "Are you from New York or like LA?" And I'm like, "No, I'm from the rock and roll capital of the world."
I love it. Go figure. Couple things on this subject of leadership. So we've been through, and we're still going through, a global pandemic. I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now. I'd be curious on 2 levels. One, just from a pure leadership standpoint, as you look across the landscape and even for your own company, what leadership behaviors that we're not seeing now might we need during this time? And then how, if at all, has the innovation changed and the time to be able to put new things out there that might help us through some of what we're going through as around the world as a civilization?
That's a great question. I really think that what the pandemic has taught us is a level of compassion and understanding, patience. I think people are more patient now. They're not as demanding on people's time or location necessarily, which has really helped. It's not necessarily so much about FaceTime as it used to be. And it's redefining. And I think that leaders are becoming a little more empathetic, more trusting of people. But in return, we have to make sure that we don't abuse that trust or empathy. So it's kind of like 2 ways. You've got to enable people to be trusted So, for example, we have a policy here at Nottingham Spirk. It's a discretionary paid time off. It's up to you. And there's no like 2 weeks. There's no, you just have to let your teams know. You have to solve it. If you're not going to be around, have somebody else fill in for you, and so on. And so I think that that's an important thing that I hope continues. Hope it's not, part of the problem I heard on the news the other day is part of the problem with Americans is we have a short attention span and a short memory. And so the thing is, let's hope this does stick. And I think it will, because the workplace is changing. We all have our opinions, but it has to work best for the organization and the culture. So I think that's one. And what was the second part of your question again?
I guess I'm wondering about just innovation and how has that impacted what might be coming forward in the form of new products and technologies? Because what is the timeline even for you guys to kind of get things into the marketplace?
Well, it's funny. Before the pandemic, I can't tell you how many companies I talked to that said, we're a fast follower, or we're pretty good right now. We're just trying to solve our needs. That's like, I never hear that anymore. People are interested in innovating. They're interested in new horizons. They're looking at, breakthrough areas. And I feel that when everything was shut down, you heard companies like General Motors doing ventilators, and you heard companies doing things that were completely different. And I think that inspired a lot of companies to think of innovation as a critical part of their business, which, we're busier than ever. And I think that, again, I hope that sticks and I hope it continues because, the world is different and will forever be changed. And I think people are appreciating why innovation is important, because we have to stay creative. We have to continue to improve lives. And I think in general, innovation is being much more respected. And, the creatives are an important part of companies now. They're being elevated to a point where their voice counts.
Yeah, let's hope so. You're real active in a lot of different associations, and you're on several boards. And how does that inform how you're running the business and how you lead, for that matter?
Well, it's a great point. I mean, I've always felt like there's a great book called Your Network is Your Net Worth. And you like to network, and well, first of all, we never would have met each other if it wasn't for Ty.
That's right.
And I would have never met Ty if I wasn't involved with the Consumer Technology Association. He's a hard guy to get to. I mean, he's a great inspirational person, but he is probably the single busiest person I've ever met.
He is.
And he's inspiring. And I think that it's necessary to make the time to give your time to groups. So I really am passionate about technology as a person. I just love tech. I mean, I got a connected mug here. And it keeps my coffee hot.
There you go.
But, I get involved in things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate, and it shows. So when I'm at these meetings, I will be passionate about my thoughts, and I'm also learning and listening, because I'll tell you what, when you're in organizations with the top leaders in technology that are also giving their time, you are learning so much how to be a person, how to be a leader, and you're learning about what's coming. And so I can, as a consumer, I'm like a part of the ins and outs of what's coming up, and I can help provide perspective. And then not only that, I can meet amazing people and give back. And so for me, it's exciting. I love going to CES every year. It's something I look forward to. And, that is important. I also just recently became a member of YPO, which was an amazing organization. I didn't even know it existed. And that's the cool part.
It's been around for a long time, right?
It has been. And I learned from two different people from different cities. One was from the consumer tech. He used to work at Magic Leap. And he said, you should join YPO. And I'm like, what's that? And then I hear another client who's in the Bay Area. He's the president of the Bay Area chapter. And he said, you should join YPO. And he introduced me to the Cleveland guy. And so now I'm a part of that. And, I'm excited about that. One's really, YPO is truly, the Young Presidents Organization is truly about cultivating leadership, learning from each other, sharing things, and gaining insight and networking. And so, being the VP of growth, I'm all about new things and connecting. And the way that I try to cultivate relationships is I don't want to sell as much as I want to give and be at the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. So it's all about putting yourself out there, planting seeds, and just showing value.
Yeah, that's great. I want to pivot a little bit. And this is, I want to talk about DEI, which, it means so many different things to different people and to different organizations. But I think the whole George Floyd, racial equity issue that hit hard, it's been over a year. It's hard to imagine. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going away. I'd love to get your take on, what does this mean to you, maybe personally, and then as an owner of a business, mm-hmm. And then an owner of a business that helps create more innovative things. What does that mean in terms of the audiences that we're becoming? The census just came out, right? And we're more Black and brown than ever in our, mm-hmm. At least in this country. So I'm kind of weaving a few different themes together, but when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that mean to you at this point in our lives, in our civilization?
Well, what it means is America is not one person. It's a wonderful mix of lots of people from different backgrounds. And what's so great is the intent, I believe, is for every culture and nationality to be celebrated. For example, you go to Epcot, it's this world of countries, and I think, as far as I always like to say, I actually just wrote an article about cognitive diversity, mm-hmm. And it's not just so much about your education, but where you came from, who you are as a person, and who you are as a person being your race, where you grew up, mm-hmm. develops who you are. Sure. And it tends to guide you to what you want to do. And so that, it is possible for some companies to hire in their own image, despite the role. And I feel that it's important to not only hire diverse people, but also hire people that are not you, that might challenge you. And I think that that's how you're going to create real change. And you have to allow people to be in meetings to say, this might sound crazy, or, I don't understand, or why are we doing that? And, I used to be at a job once that, as a designer, and I remember presenting something and I said, well, why can't I present my work? And they said, well, that's not what you do. Let so-and-so present it. And by the way, they're across the room. So I couldn't even hear what they said. And I couldn't understand that. I'm like, well, why? Well, that's just not what we do, and it's interesting. I've had internships, I've had jobs at lots of different companies. So and that was a time and a place, but I remember how that felt, and it really didn't feel good. And, at NS, we are proud to say that we have female designers, we have female mm-hmm. engineers, we have quite a few different races of people here. And I don't think we really like variety in thought, in perspective. And I think that, again, that's the magic that we bring, because, we're cultivating creativity. And when you're cultivating creativity, you're allowing rules to be bended, broken, and redefined. And I think that there are places for lots of things, but I'll tell you what, when you have a unique perspective and you have an open mind, you can create so much more. Yeah. You know what? And it's actually fun, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have, I think that's a great holistic perspective to have. And I hope that we're able to adopt more of that mindset as we move forward.
And it's hard. It's very hard, right? Because if you're a corporation, you have shareholders and all sorts of things. It's easy to create your own blocks or rules, but I think that you always have to keep in mind that we're going to have to continue. It's not, it's easy for me to say how we do it because we're in this like bubble that we've created, and we're a smaller company, about 75 people, but we've done our best as a family-run company to run it that way, and really we're 75 families. But I think that, when companies are able to work outside of themselves, I was actually going to say this before. One of the greatest things that I think came out of the pandemic is this notion of collaboration that's much more open. Companies collaborating with unlikely companies. I mean, for example, Kanye West just came out with his new album.
Yeah.
And his Yeezy with the Gap. Who would ever think that even would happen? So there's things that are happening that are very unexpected.
Right.
You think about, I'm just trying to think of other companies that are collaborating. But it's amazing to see how these happen. And if companies can think outside themselves and think outside what they're known for, some great things can happen.
Well, what comes to mind for me, and this is maybe a small thing, but I was just walking by a store, and this has been happening, this proliferation of body consciousness, right? So larger size models. I'm not a size 4. And so I noticed that there was easily a size 16, 18. It was what do you call it? Mannequin in the window. You would never see that before. Right. But it's really mirroring. You walk down the street and this is the size of women and men, their counterparts, that you see. So there's a recognition of what is versus an ideal. Maybe that's starting to happen.
It is. And I think that it is a nice refresh. You've kind of seen, I think Dove came out with Real Beauty a little while back.
That's right.
And, that's an important perspective to have. And here's the thing. You could tailor clothes for anybody. You go to a good tailor and they can make you look great. And I think that if you think about it that way, you're not going to be so obsessed and stressed. We all could do better. But right now, let's do the best we can.
And make it accessible, right, to more people. Make it accessible.
Yeah, make it accessible. And the notion of an industrial designer is to create products people can buy. And I was always in the school of thought where you can create for the masses. It doesn't have to be for people that can afford it necessarily. You create products that everybody can purchase and enable everybody to succeed to a point. Now, obviously, there's going to be good, better, best, but you got to enable people to, get it for the right price. We do these focus group sessions and insights, qualitative and quantitative studies, where we always say, "What are you willing to pay for this?" And so what we try to say is, okay, that's our target. Let's work backwards. And how much do we have to make it for? So from our perspective, there's been a lot of products out there where designers will say, this is just what it's going to have to cost. And that'll make or break it. Either it succeed or it won't. And so our philosophy is let's get it to what people are willing to pay for it. And I think that's an important perspective.
As you were talking, what came to mind for me was we're hearing so much about supply chain issues because of the pandemic.
Yeah. And
I'm wondering if that's come downstream to impact any of the products that you have been participating in, and how is that? What does that look like? I mean, how much it's not a quick fix. I mean, it's not as though once the pandemic is over that chips and aluminum and all these other things that are starting to be scarce are going to start flooding the market.
It is. It has affected us, and it's been a challenge. We've seen a lot more companies want to build in America, which has been great. I love that trend because in Ohio, we're like the manufacturing valley. We've got lots of factories. I think Peloton just is building a facility not too far away from Cleveland.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Isn't that amazing? They're building a state-of-the-art Peloton factory. in Ohio, which is huge.
Yeah.
And, I think that's one thing that I've seen that's been fantastic. But, we've got this other client that we did. It's a champagne brand, and it's called Beaujois. So if you look it up, it's a champagne bottle. It's wrapped in copper armor, it looks like.
Ooh.
And it's copper. It's like I always say, dumb as a sticker.
Wow.
Ours is precious metal. Wow. And it's a reasonably it's an expensive bottle, maybe $100, but not too crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we had to really figure out the supply chain, because copper is one of those target supply items. So we've had to figure out and navigate a lot of that. There's only certain things you can do, but we're solving it. But I think in general, it's just a challenge you have to deal with. Yeah. And so, like I said, bringing it back home has been a great trend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, we'll see how this all starts to play out.
Yeah.
Right? I want to pivot back to you and just, how you think and where you've been. And I ask this a lot. And that is, do you have a particular faith or mindset or philosophy that you practice or follow? And if so, when did that sort of lock in for you, and how does it inform how you lead?
So as far as faith or mindset, like things that I do to kind of maintain my creative focus, I actually, it's a process. I think, as through my growth as a person, as a creative person, naturally you want to do everything, and you start to realize that there's only so much time. And I'm the person that wants to say yes to everything, or I used to be.
Yeah.
And that was very challenging. I would do personal projects, I do work projects, I do travel, I do I would want to do everything. I want to have a great time. I want to do and explore and expand. And it got to a point where I had this cyclical, seasonal burnout, where I just was like, I literally couldn't produce. Wow. And my creativity was down, and it would almost like I was waiting for it to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's got to a point that I started to realize how to enable mindfulness practices to kind of create some sustainability, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I practice it daily, and it's one of the cherished parts of my day. And I've even talked to leaders, and I asked, "What's your secret?" And they say meditation, they say mindfulness. And I found many different ways to do that to help me kind of tone it down a little bit and balance and look for the long term. And so that, for me, creating a sense of pause, being able to relax and not overwork and allow life to be part of it too, has been an important part. And I think that now, and even practicing mindfulness when things are going great, because it's like working out. You have to continue it. It's not something that you just do every now and then. Mm-hmm. It's a lifestyle. And I think that that's an important factor. And then also delegating.
Art form.
Right?
Yeah,
man. I have always been the worst delegator, because naturally I wanted to do everything. And you just can't. You just can't. And when you can enable others to do it, you learn and you could do more. And it's bizarre. Mm-hmm. But I really feel that the art of delegation has really helped me become more of a leader, but more of a fulfilled person. Mm-hmm. And I find that I'm able to do new things that I never did before. So, working as a team, collaborating, I love working with people and learning.
Excellent. Well, I'm always mindful of time among executives such as yourself. So I want to wrap up, but maybe ask you, as I often do, to just share whatever words of wisdom or inspiration that you might have on any subject that's important to you, that you think this particular audience of leaders and soon-to-be leaders might appreciate and benefit from.
You know what? I say that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. I love that quote. Nothing is permanent. And, one of the things that I always felt is if I needed change, I just did it. I didn't dwell on it. I didn't want to be the guy at a company that wished that he left years ago. If you find that you can make change and you're celebrated for it, do it. Help improve a company. If you find yourself in a career that you enjoy, make it better. Learn more. Don't take that as your final, chapter. And if you want to try new things, do it and don't regret it. And be open-minded to opportunity and also take risks. I remember how terrified I was when I got my job at General Motors. It was, I was one of two guys hired that year. It was me and a guy from Art Center from Pasadena. And we were in the lobby of the General Motors headquarters. And I felt like I was in the movie Goldfinger because it was like that Eero Saarinen year that they're building. Yeah. And I'm like, so is it just us? And he's like, yep. And and I'm like, wow, and I remember just, how did I get here? Am I an imposter? I kept thinking the imposter syndrome. Yep. And every day, I think it took me like 2 hours to leave because I would walk around and look at all the renderings on the walls. And at the car companies, you signed your drawing. And so, of course, when I started, mine was at the bottom, really small. And then by the time I left, mine were bigger and up higher. And that's why I knew I made it to a point where I felt comfortable. Yeah. But, I think just be yourself and embrace when you're nervous. But don't let your nervousness keep you from doing what you should. And just remember, you got to be happy, because what's the point? If you're not happy, what are you doing? Yeah. Do something that makes you happy. That's right. And, just give everything you can and enjoy life for the fullest. That's what I would say.
Words to live by, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bill Nottingham, thank you so much for making time to speak with me today and to share your wisdom and insights and successes. Wish you continued success with Nottingham Spirk, and just grateful to you.
Well, thank you. And I really felt honored to meet you and be a part of this. And I've really enjoyed this. This was fun. It's it's fun to reflect, and I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy Fifth Dimensional Leadership, subscribe, share, and leave a rating or review on your platform of choice. And don't forget to check us out at ginnyclarke.com. That's GINNYCLARKE.com. You can explore this and prior episodes, view tips and tricks, and sign up for special announcements. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. And until then, remember, you're just that good. Special thanks to writer and collaborator Jackson Best, contributors Sadasia McCutcheon and Tianka Shepard, operations manager Kimberly Cupits, and production and editing Podfly Productions.